Hello and welcome to The Arise interview. 60 minutes of big questions about the big stories from the news and beyond, with fresh insight and critical analysis. I'm Charles Anyegolo. Coming up in the next hour, today we meet and celebrate the man who for more than 3 decades was the creative force behind some of the greatest classics in Nigerian television history. Before the word Nollywood had even been thought up, and long before the advent of private television and the internet, NTA, the Nigerian Television Authority, was the only game in town, and Peter Igho was the games master, bringing to light enormously successful productions for NTA using formats that have endured to this day. The impossibly brilliant, high-profile Peter Igho in a moment. Now, for most of his working life, which encompassed the golden Nigerian television era of the 70s, 80s and 90s, Peter Igho produced dramas, soap operas and sitcoms of dazzling storytelling quality, educating, enlightening and entertaining a generation of Nigerians when there was neither cinemas nor satellite cable nor the internet. And the idea of private television was simply that, an idea. Nigerians from all walks of life would gather as a community around television sets to watch Peter Igho's productions. New Masquerade, Cock Crow at Dawn, Things Fall Apart, Behind the Clouds, Village Headmaster, and numerous others, inspiring many Nigerians to buy their first television set and demonstrating that the medium was a stable African form of entertainment that could attract advertisers whilst telling stories about African culture and traditions. The work he started in the 1970s would eventually grow into a larger component known today as Nollywood. It is fair to say that to a large extent, every single Nollywood is excellence in television and film. Peter Igho was honored recently with a Lifetime Achievement Trophy at the Africa Magic Viewers' Choice Awards. Here is their tribute, celebrating the man they called an African legend. And I'm delighted to say that the legendary Peter Igho joins me now in the studios. What an honor to have you here, sir.
Thank you very much, Charles.
And of course, beyond you being a legend, I mean, you're a personal friend. I've known you for many, many years. So I am absolutely delighted to see you. And this is a chance for people to get to know Peter Igho. You know the way they say, will the real Peter Igho now stand up? Although you've always been real.
There,
but that's your award on the table. We'll talk about that a little later. But did you come into the television industry by accident or by design?
By design. But it's good to put it in perspective. I mean, I was born in Jos, and at that time...
But you're not actually from, your family isn't from Jos?
No, my father and my parents, both parents were from Delta State, Urobo.
Okay.
But they were in Jos for many, many years. It was a tin miner, and we were all born in Jos. Most of my family there. So growing up in Jos at that time, there was no radio. Well, there was rediffusion, but no radio as we know it now.
Right.
And no television, of course. Only the cinema. So I grew up, of course, coming from school, hawking things, so my mother will end up in the cinema. Received a lot of beatings for coming in home late, but we persevered.
Do you remember some of the things you watched in the cinema?
Oh yes, I mean in those days there were first the English films and the American films. There was Johnny Westmoreland's Jungle Jim in the Forbidden Land, the Tarzan series. There was the Davy Crockett,
right,
King of the Wild Frontier, and all that. Then after a while, the Indian films came, then the Chinese films. But before then, in fact, with the Indian films, most of them came without subtitles. But because we had come to understand the language of the moving picture, even as little children, some adults would pay for us to go in to explain to them who was the actor and who was the bad guy and all that.
I like that. That
so I grew up, that was in the environment in which I grew up. And so I fell in love with that at a very early age. And
but in spite of that, yes, in spite of the influence of American films and sort of, you know, Bollywood and all of that, the format that you perfected for Nigeria was more the soap opera type, wasn't it? The situation drama, which sort of happened inside confined environments.
Yes, I mean, to be honest, most of us grew up idolizing, well, not, we loved The Village Master. I grew up as a child.
I have to say that was a brilliant show. It was so
The Village
funny.
Master, Samanja, and The Masquerade. So I loved those programs, but they were all studio-based programs. When I came into television, I had left university in 1972, employed as an education officer, posted to Northwest then.
And what university was that?
Ibadan.
Okay, right.
University of Ibadan.
Yes.
And so I realized that the students were always dodging from school. So I wanted to keep them engaged. So I wrote a play called Ogaga's Heart, a dance drama, using Nupe music and dance. And surprise, surprise, it was so successful. The entire town wanted to watch. The students all watched. Then the principal said, we must study, stayed with it. We thought Northwest stayed with it, got to Sokoto, and we told the governor wanted to see it because he had heard so much about it. We performed for the governor.
And what year was this?
1974.
Okay.
1972, 73, 74. The governor chose it as Northwest State entry for their festival, the 1974 festival. There were 12 states then. So we represented Northwest State, Gagasad. We got to Lagos and 3 plays won. We were one of the 3 winning plays.
Wow.
But when I came back, they wanted me to remain in with culture, because I was the Ministry of Culture, but I refused. At that time, television had just come on board. Sokoto had just set up their own television station, NTV Sokoto, and I chose to go to television.
Yes, I remember that I was reading that you actually, your first innings was at NTV Sokoto.
Sokoto, that's right.
Right, and then obviously that was the regions, but you then graduated from there to the network.
Well, by the time we got to television, Sokoto, well, we had a handicap. We had Sokoto NTV didn't have a proper studio. It was a store converted to a studio. The roofs were very low,
right,
and so we couldn't do proper lighting. But then there were no recording facilities. Everything was live, you transmitted live. And my responsibility as the head of drama was to produce an English and a Hausa drama every week, live.
You mean a new one or a series?
New episode.
Good God, that's quite a challenge.
And yes, so you had no margin for error.
I mean, once
they came to you, you were on air. And but this was still in the confines of the studio, and I didn't like that. So necessity became the mother of invention. I started moving out of the studio, and I'm credited with having invented transmission, moving from the studio to location. And most of the other plays I wrote at that time, A Matter of Conscience, Time to Register, in Sokoto then, I started using the camera they were using for the newsreels to shoot little bits as inserts for my drama. And slowly but surely, I moved most of it out, and I started production entirely on location. So when in 1977, the NTA was born, all the stations came under NTA. And 78, NTA wanted to showcase that oneness by organizing a drama competition among the 12 NTA stations. I wrote, produced, and directed the entry from NTA Sokoto called Moment of Truth. We came first.
Wow.
And 1979, when I think it's President Obasanjo came up with his Operation Feed the Nation.
Obasanjo was the military head of state at the time, right?
And he came up with an agricultural program called Operation Feed the Nation. I was then, the NT then decided to produce a drama series that would help support agriculture. And because I was the producer of the winning entry, I was brought from Sokoto to Lagos to put together that winning entry, that production. And that was the birth of Cockcrow at Dawn.
And of course, Lagos was the capital at the time.
Yes.
Right.
And the head of course,
so
the head
NTA was headquartered there.
Yes. They wanted me to shoot it in Lagos. But I said, I mean, how can you shoot an agricultural program in Lagos with all the traffic jam? So I pleaded to be allowed to take it to Jos, where I was born, where I grew up.
And we're looking at Cockcrow at Dawn now. It's on the screen.
You know, no, that's actually
that's village. That's Masquerade.
That's
yeah.
Masquerade.
That is Masquerade.
And,
that's the wrong.
Yes,
that's the wrong clip. Yeah.
So I took it to Jos, and of course the rest is history.
Yeah.
The rolling hills, the waterfalls. These are the beautiful things that enriched that program.
And I mean, shooting Cockcrow at Dawn, because I understand you actually filmed it
the first 13 episodes are shot on film, 69.
Right. I mean, but you did quite a bit of the filming yourself.
No.
Is that right?
No, I had first when we wanted to shoot Cockcrow, it was the first in many. It was the first ever drama to be shot entirely on location. It was the first drama series with its own theme song, specially composed theme song. It was the first drama series to have its own disengaged facilities, and all that. So it was a challenge for me because I had to work with the cine camera. But luckily for me, I had a cameraman who had come from the film world.
Right.
He'd grown up in the ministries of information, and in those days, the ministries of information, they had film units.
Yes.
And these Nigerians were there, and those Nigerians, many of them who were producers and directors in those film units, became the pioneer filmmakers.
Right.
Working on celluloid, but that's to come later.
Okay, let me just ask you to hold on there. Okay. We're going to come straight back to you. We need to take a break. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we celebrate the career of Peter Igho, one of the great Nigerian television legends of the 20th century. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Anyagulu. Now, while we may have thousands of television options today, people looking for viewing entertainment in Nigeria in the 1970s and 80s had just one choice, and the Nigerian Television Authority, or NTA, was it. Television was still in its infancy in Africa, and Nigeria, leading the rest of sub-Saharan Africa, took the early steps, molding and shaping dramatic entertainment under the guidance of Peter Igho and paving the way for all the productions we take for granted today. His golden career spans a period of over 30 years, graduating from student productions and regional television to become the hottest producer in the national spotlight at NTA, and beginning a creative journey that changed Nigerian television forever. Today, Peter Igho shares his memories with us, revealing more of his untold story in a moment. But first, here are some of Nigeria's biggest stars who worked with Peter Igho, remembering his immense contribution to the arts. Peter Igho is still with me in the studio. It's brilliant to see that, isn't it? To see your son doing that. We're going to talk about all that a little bit later, but let's just go back to the challenge of making those productions then, because most people don't realize that it took an emotional toll on you.
It's since I stopped at Cockcrow at Dawn, Cockcrow at Dawn almost didn't happen. But when I was taken to Lagos to put this together, after many weeks in Lagos, before I went to Lagos, I was actually in camp in Argungu, training the Northwest State Cultural Troupe. I was packaging them there for about 2 months before I was told to go to Lagos. I stayed in Lagos for about 3 months. It was Christmas time. And but things kept going on and on and on and on until one day the acting DG then called me to say, look, we've just got a call from your wife. She said you've been away from home for 5 months and it's Christmas time, they haven't seen you. So she's packing her children to go home to her mother. I said, what exactly is keeping you? And I told him, I said, okay, quickly. So they quickly approved my budget. And I had to rush back to Sokoto before my wife went left.
AWOL, eh?
So anyway, getting back to Sokoto, and I had to, because we fixed the date for to start production of Cockcrow, I had to go out to meet all the various artists, get them, prepare them and all that, and get the camp ready before people would come. This was December. I was supposed to start shooting on the 4th of January. So I rushed to Sokoto, picked my wife, she was pregnant, picked with the children, and drove all the way from Sokoto to Zaria to meet Kasimuyeru and the others, Uncle Gaga. Then to Kaduna and meet a few others. Then to Jos to get the landlords pay for the houses that we're going to use and all that. Get the script writers the scripts to be printed and all that. And then the general manager of NTA said, you cannot go like that. You must come back and produce your annual musical program. So I drove all the way back to Sokoto again with my family. Got to the house, packed my car, and went to the studio. I worked in the studio till about 11 p.m. and then got back. I was too tired to drive the car. I left my car at home, luckily. Got to the studio, finished at 11 a.m., got home, my car wasn't there. And the security man said, look, Your wife was in trouble. We didn't know what was wrong. They couldn't find anybody to take her. So she drove herself to the hospital. So I took a taxi straight to the hospital, got to the hospital gate, and there was my car just parked by the side of the hospital. So I asked, where is the person who drove this car? They said, she's been rushed to...
My goodness.
We rushed, they got there, and they took me to my wife. She was in bed. The longest sort of thought that she had lost her pregnancy. All that driving along with her made her lose it.
I'm sorry.
So she was there, and I had to leave the next day. Because I had told everybody to come, and there was no way the artists would start arriving, and I wasn't there. So I told her, I said, listen, I have a feeling about this program, that it's going to be a successful program. And if I do not go now, things will go wrong. And she said, I understand, you can go. So I got my brother to say, please stay with her. So I left her in hospital to go and start Cockroach at Dawn. So this is the kind of thing we go through.
So this is all about, and I think that's a very important point, beyond the sad elements to it, that devotion and dedication and discipline are the keys to the magic kingdom of brilliant television.
Of course. I always tell my staff that it's not enough to say I am good in terms of technical quality. You have to put your soul and heart into that.
You've got to have
a lot of self-sacrifice to make the difference between good and excellent.
Yes, no, that's a very good point, and I hope the people who are trying to get into the business are listening to watching all of this. But I mean, would you say that you were ambitious as a person? Because I mean, what the story you're telling us clearly suggests someone who is a perfectionist. I mean, you felt you had to do it yourself. You weren't sort of taking any chances of delegating responsibility. You were on top of it throughout. And I mean, did that suggest an ambitious person, or
well,
did you feel in your guts that you were destined for some greatness and you had to do it?
Well, not destined for greatness. Not that I knew I was destined for greatness, but I knew that whatever I wanted to do, I had to do it well. I believe that I didn't believe in half measures, and so I was driven, kind of, maybe not ambitious, maybe I don't know what I did.
But you had drive.
I had a drive that I knew that I had to tell a story. And many people didn't quite. I'll give an example. I'll tell you, when I chose television, my brothers, seeing the success of the drama, the Nigerian TV Festival, made a lot of money. There was a lot of money given to me to lead the team. So when my brothers saw all that money, and they said, why go to television? Stay where there's money. And I said, no, I want, and they said, what's in television? Written by, produced by, directed by, what's there? That's not going to give you any money. Stay with them. In the end, we had to go to my father, who said, look, if he wants to go there, fine. I believe that someday that name may even open doors for him more than that money.
But that's a legitimate question, though, which I really ought to ask you, because I mean, here you were a producer, a groundbreaking producer, I mean, pioneering so many things. I mean, you could have made so much more money, although I suppose the private sector didn't exist that much in television at the time. So the medium was NTA, and you reached the zenith of that. But I mean, how did the idea of some of these classic productions come to you? I mean, how did you get to move them from an idea in your head to a script and then to a screen?
Well, many times events led to some of those things. I told you that led to Cockroach at Dawn. But before Cockroach, some of the plays I did in Sokoto there, I recall that after Moment of Truth, the day we shot Moment of Truth, there was a party sequence, and we finished. I had shot that little bit again on film, and we finished shooting about 2 a.m. in the morning. And I told my cast and crew to please go and take a rest, and we'll start at 10 o'clock the next day. And so they left. 8 o'clock in the morning, someone called me to say they needed my attention. I went to check what was the problem. My sound recordist, Thompson, apparently had gotten home pretty tired or something.
Right.
Maybe he wanted to get something to eat, or I can't recall what happened. Anyway, he drove his car from his house, and halfway to where he wanted to go, he ran into another car. And when I got to the hospital, he was already dead. He was there on the slab, dead. And a week later, of course, I got to know that the car he had the accident with was bought on loan He hadn't finished paying for the loan, so they had to recover the car.
Wow.
And the house he was in, since he no longer was there, he had been allocated to another senior officer, so his family had to move out. And I said, what is this? Is this the life? Is this what we get for putting our heart and soul for that? So I did a play called A Matter of Conscience. And it had to do with the producer dying in the course of duty.
That's a very sad thing, but something came out of it. But
came
what
out
about
of
things like, I mean, the sitcoms, Village Headmaster, was so popular, I mean, so funny.
But don't forget that, like I said, I grew up myself watching and admiring Village Headmaster. So I do not take the claim for that.
Right.
They were all studio-based programs produced by the various regions at that time. In the West,
but you were director of programs, so you...
No. We hadn't come to that.
Okay, right.
I was still a producer myself in Sokoto while all that was going on. The most popular was the Village Headmaster. I produced in Lagos, Masquerade in the East, and Samenja in Kaduna. So I loved those programs. I myself fell in love with them. So years later, after Cock Crow, when I was now in 1983 made a general manager in charge of network programs, I said, look, these programs deserve to be on the network, national level, not at the local level anymore.
Right.
So we went around, brought them all back, the artists back, went around. Many of them had wandered away. Right. We got them all back.
So you're more of an executive producer, bringing it to
bring them back
attention.
now. And then that's when they became new Village Headmaster, new Samanja, and new Masquerade.
Okay.
So that's when we took over from at the network level.
Right, okay. So well, let me just ask you to hold it there, because we must take another break. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with Peter Igho, one of the great Nigerian television legends of the 20th century. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Aniagolu. Now, one day, many decades ago, a student named Peter Igho, who was studying English at university, decided to try his hand at writing plays for the stage. It turned to be fortuitous, the beginning of a career that would last more than 30 years and would churn out a string of television drama hits. Peter Igho was not only a talented writer, but also a precocious producer, an excellent director with an eye for a superb shot and an ear for a great story. NTA had the good sense to put him in charge of their productions, and as director of programs, he hit his stride, eclipsing anything that had been done so far in Nigerian television, discovering a whole slew of new acting and production talent, and turning their showmanship into brilliant television dramas that would become a signature for him and would inspire countless others. Today, we celebrate Peter Igho, but we are not alone. Here he is, receiving the Lifetime People's Viewers' Choice Awards, Achievement Award from the Africa Magic Entertainment Channel. And the legend is still in the house. Peter Igho, thank you for staying with us.
Thank you very much.
And why did you choose to be behind the camera rather than in front of it? Was it the power of being the force behind the production, the agent provocateur, as it were, or was it a preference for behind the scenes, sort of the creative elements, the wheeler dealing, all of that?
Well, first, I know my limits. I never had tried my hand on a camera before. And but I had tried my hands at writing, and I loved the movie animation, and I loved to put it together and all that. So I knew where my talents were, and I concentrated on that.
So you didn't want to be in front of the camera?
No. Well, let me tell you a little story.
Right.
We were shooting Cock Crow in the streets of Jos one day, and the Cock Crow had become such a phenomenal success. And a busload of students from, I think, from Benin were passing, and then they saw the NTA, and they saw the artists from Cock Crow. They saw Bello, Zemai. They stopped the driver, and they all rushed out. Some rushed to Bello, some rushed to Zemai, some rushed to Gaga, some rushed to all of them. And I, the director, was seated there alone, completely ignored. Nobody came to me. And then one of the students, a girl, I think when she'd taken the autographs, finally asked, where is the producer? And they pointed me out. So she came to me, and I said, thank God, at last I've been recognized. And then she said, are you not jealous that all these people are people attracted? I said, no, but I said, no, on the contrary. I'm happy that characters that I've created have such tremendous success. So I feel happy, and that makes me even happier. So that's, for me, the whole I suppose answer your
But of course,
question.
in today's world,
Yes.
I mean, the directors and producers are as
You were in
big,
charge.
if not bigger. I mean,
Yes.
the likes of Steven
Yes.
Spielberg and all the
Yes.
rest of them
They-
have become phenomenal stars in their own right. And as you look back at history, how do you assess how television has evolved since that time?
Well, nothing stands still, and television is one of them. Like you said, some years back, the British Film Institute invited me to give a lecture. It was then the only NTA, and I described the NTA as a one-eyed cyclops at that event, which is true. We were just the only station. And but years later, private television came. The states went back to owning their own television stations, and the more became the merrier. People now had more choices to go, and the task became, of course, with the growth of the industry technologically also, better cameras came, and it was easier now to shoot and edit. And
Right, but I mean, there seemed to be a general feeling that NTA degenerated into a sort of pretty deplorable state, especially with its local content programming. I mean, here you are pioneering some of the great things, but then after that golden era, nothing else really came up.
No,
They stopped commissioning programs. They started selling airtime and sort of buying cheap South American soap operas.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. Not in your description of content as deplorable. I do believe that, yes, that we got to a crest at a particular point. Because when I was general manager in 1983, we had every day of the week a successful program. Because at one point, I said I got tired of being told, Cockra, don't Cockra. I said I wanted to do other things. So I said, let me do for music and entertainment what I did for drama. So I put together a number of entertainment variety shows. The biggest of them was the Balamila show. I got Balamila in Kaduna, then had him invite all the top artists, Dere Atalade, Onyekongweni, Chris Okoti, all the big names came as guest stars. That was the first time Nigerians were seeing that kind of thing. Very successful. I shot 26 episodes, which I edited in London at that time. So we also did that with Sam Abbott show, the Lijadu Sisters show, and also with documentaries. So we did documentaries, Giant and the Sun, where we showcased. So we children's programming, Tales by Moonlight, Young World. So the entire gambit of programming. I said, let us improve on all of them. So all that was on, and every day of the week there was one good program on the other. All sponsored. Then from nowhere we were hit with the ball. Now, let me digress a bit. In those days of the NTA, if you were talented, you showed them talent in school, they would say, why don't you go to NTA? If you could sing, they say, you must go to NTA. If you could dance, go to NTA. So the NTA was a reservoir at that time of all the talents. And that's why in Village Headmaster, Dejimo Lewis, the Elijah Voja was the staff of the NTA. In Masquerade, Zebudayo Chikopala was a staff of the NTA. Same with Samanja. In Behind the Clouds, Dan Emeni, Enio Loja, all of them were staff of the NTA. Sorry. So with all this background, all the talents were there. Then suddenly somebody came up, NTA management came up with the directive that henceforth no staff of the authority should act in any of its drama series.
Wow.
And we all wondered what was that. I led a protest to the management to say, what was this? And they said, no, well don't you see the BBC? Do you see staff of the BBC acting? And I said, BBC has a long tradition of actors coming from the cinema, from all that they can draw from. But here we're using amateurs and all that. So, and when we use our staff, we save money because you pay your staff half the fees you pay the outsider. And two, if your staff is cast in a program, he knows his job is at stake if he doesn't show up and behaves. So we had control, but it fell on deaf ears. And
it all went downhill.
We had to rest Village Headmaster.
Right.
We had to rest Masquerade because the staff refused to, they didn't want to Because he said if you want to act, you must resign from the NTA.
Do you think that they've done an injustice to the long history of very good local content programming?
Well, yes, that was really the straw that broke the camel's back. Because before then, there was an unwritten, we all knew that, on the NTA network, the NTA network was sole preserved for Nigerian-produced content. No foreign program on the content. The television stations could show movies from different parts of the world.
You think it's the competition from private television that forced them to start trying to
No. It was something else.
That? Right.
And so what then happened, of course, was Masquerade went off air. Chikobola had to resign from the NTA to bring it back. Village Master went off air. Behind the Clouds went off air because Dan Emeni, Lodger, all of them who were staff didn't want to resign. Only Madazi resigned to produce the series. But then suddenly we saw why all this happened. Because when these programs went, of course, Nature Oppose the Vacuum, suddenly we now saw the introduction of the Mexican soap.
Right.
So the Mexican soap came in because Nature Oppose the Vacuum.
Right, of course.
The local content had gone.
We're going to have to take a break in a second. But I mean, very briefly, would you want to see those programs, remakes of those programs? I mean, you see that in the West all the time. Great television is remade. It appeals to a new generation, sort of thing.
Well, I've got good news for you. The NTA is doing exactly that. They're rebooting the classics.
That's very good. We can talk about that when we come back. You're watching The Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we celebrate the career of Peter Igho, one of the truly great pioneers of Nigerian television drama. Stay with us. Welcome back to The Arise interview. I'm Charles Onyekolu. Now, if you were watching television last week, you would have seen remarkable history being made at the Africa Magic Viewers' Choice Awards, where my guest today, the veteran producer and filmmaker Peter Igho, and his son, the director Tosin Igho, won the Legend Award and the Best Picture Award, respectively, on the same night.
Oh no. How long do I have? Kolade, if you're watching this, it just means that I am dead. Before you can take over my estate, I want you to spend 7 days in Ajegunle.
Trailer for the movie Seven, and of course that's from the son of my guest today, Peter Igho. I mean, both of you making history, winning the Legend Award, Best Picture Award on the same night. Was that a surprise? Were you expecting
Mine was a surprise, but actually his was actually for editing.
Right.
He had 7 nominations: Best Writer, Best Director, Best Sound, Best Editing, and Best Picture. He won for Best Editing.
Okay, right.
But he had 7 nominations.
Because all the news was suggesting that he won. It won the Best Picture.
It was for
Award.
Best Editing.
Right. Okay.
And I was, of course, for the Industry Award and all that.
And have you considered co-producing with your son, working together on something, or is it like you've had enough, basically?
No. I'm still very much there. I let him do his thing, but we discussed a lot of things together. We're working on a number of projects together. Fortunately for me, his elder brother, Tony Igho, is also in the movie industry, but he's specialized in special effects and animation.
Right.
So a lot of the special effects, and we also setting up an animation studio to do special effects and, of course, animate many of these our stories.
So keep it in the family.
We keep it in the family for now. So we're working on a new concept that I don't think the country has had the last of us.
Yeah, well, that's good to know. I mean, you described yourself as analog and him as digital, but of course, to some extent, your career overlapped the two, though, didn't it?
Well, yes. I mean, I just joked on that because sometime back the NBC had us going around the country trying to educate people on the transition from analog to digital. So they had the two of us in every room. I would talk and they introduced me as the analog, and then he would come and he would introduce that the digital. So I made a joke of that. But truly, I mean, things have changed. I mean, my own time, it was a feat that I could write, produce, and direct. In his own time, Tosi is his own cameraman. You asked, he's his own cameraman. He does his writing, he does the editing, he does his sound. And so they are a one-man team.
But
now.
he directed that.
He did, produced, directed, he did the sound, he did
it looks
editing.
very good,
Yes,
though,
yes.
I have to say. But of course, at the time when you were, I mean, 70s, 80s and that sort of thing, NTA was a monopoly.
It was.
There was no competition. So in a sense, you didn't feel pressure of competing with anyone. I mean, did that make things easier, or were you constantly challenging yourself?
You were
still?
constantly challenging yourself because we had in-house competition. It was always Sokoto against Kaduna, Kaduna against, we were competing against each other and all that. But even at the network level, you wanted to be one of the best because if you were good enough, then they took you from your station to the network level to be part of the network team.
Which is, of course, what happened with you.
Happened to me. So it was always that want to be better, want to be better.
So what would you say are the skills that make a great television or movie producer?
Well, sometimes they invite me to TV college to talk to producers. And I always say that the technical know-how, understanding what a producer should do, or if you're talking about directing, the skills that you must in terms of doing your shooting script, understanding the right kind of image to put where, interpreting the words to tell the story now with the pictures, the right pictures, the right shots and all that, was good. But that necessarily does not require more than 45% of that talent. The rest of it is the passion and the dedication and the self-sacrifice you put into making it. And I always tell them that if you come into this industry for the glamour of walking down the street and everybody shouting, hey, 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 then you're in the wrong profession because it requires hard work, tears and sweat to make things work. If you want to be the best, then you must come in there knowing that you have to work hard.
Absolutely.
To do that.
And looking back, I mean, do you regret that most of your career was spent working at a government institution such as NTA, when with your enormous talent, you could probably have made it as an independent producer in the private sector?
Don't forget, at that time, there were no independent producers.
Yeah, but later on, it became,
by the time but...
I mean, you didn't leave till the 2000s,
yes.
2008.
At the age of 60. But the important thing is for me, like I said, was that drive to succeed. And but let me make a little correction here just before I answer that question. Every time we've said I, television is one place where you cannot clap with one hand.
Yeah, of course. It's like what we're doing now. There are so many people.
I was lucky to be in situations where I had the right kind of leader bosses who gave me the opportunity and supported me to grow, and the ability to set up teams that gave me all their 100% dedication and support. So they all through my period in the NTA, it is that luck. And of course, the knack to be able to put together
because
the best teams.
You yourself had to be a leader.
Exactly.
To pick
to
the
be
right
able to
people.
pick the right people to do the right job. And of course, also to have the right leaders, the bosses on top.
Yeah.
And Kokro wouldn't have happened without Engineer Maduka, because management took a decision at that time to say, apart from the dispensable programs, if you may, like the everyday programs in every station, let us put our money and resources every year into one major project.
Right.
They started out with a documentary called Portrait of a Culture, produced by Peter Igho.
Yeah, and we almost forgot to mention, we're almost out of time, Things Fall Apart, you made it into a film.
Well, NTA decided to make it into a film, and I was the executive producer.
Right.
And so we had all that kind of support coming from the management. And same to management supported Things Fall Apart, and I led the team and again we shot on film using the same cameraman I used for Kokro had done, Alhaji Mohammed. And of course that's when I brought in Peter Igho.
There's Pete on the screen.
Yes. Since when I read the book in secondary school, the moment I closed the last page, we were in the same school with Peter Igho. I walked straight to his class and I said, "Sir, I've just finished Things Fall Apart, and you are Okonkwo." And he laughed. And years later, when we're going to now shoot Things Fall Apart, and behind my back, the producer, to impress me, had shot 2 episodes with a friend of his as Okonkwo. When I saw that, I said, no. I drove straight to Peter Igho's house. When I woke him up, I said, "Sir, I told you long ago in secondary school that you are going to be Okonkwo. You have the opportunity now to be the Okonkwo." That's how he came in to be Okonkwo in Things Fall Apart.
Well, that is a remarkable piece of history. And on that remarkable note, I want to say thank you very much indeed.
Thank you
Peter,
very much for having
that's
me.
your award sitting there, by the way. That's the Legend Award for the Industry Merit Award to Peter Igho from the Africa Magic Viewers' Choice Awards. Congratulations, well deserved. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. That's it for this edition of the Arise interview. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye and thank you for watching.